The old warrior stood before the young cadets, his thick gray skin marked with deep scars that told stories of countless battles. Zektar had seen more war than any Vorthok alive, but when he spoke of humans, something changed in his four yellow eyes. They grew distant, almost afraid. "You want to know about the Great War," he said, his voice deep and rough like grinding stone. "You want to know how our mighty hegemony, rulers of 17 star systems, came to beg for peace with creatures that had barely left their homeworld?" The young Vorthok soldiers leaned forward in their seats. They had heard whispers about the humans, but never the full story. Never from someone who had actually fought them. Sektar's clawed hands gripped the metal podium. "I will tell you, but listen well. What I share with you will change how you see war forever. It changed me." He closed his eyes and his mind went back 15 years to when everything started. Back to when the Vorthok thought they were the strongest race in the galaxy. The Vorthok expansion fleet moved through space like a dark cloud of death. 300 warships, each one bigger than a human city. Admiral Dexron commanded from his flagship, the Bone Crusher, a vessel that had destroyed a dozen worlds. "Sir, we are approaching the outer edge of the human territory," reported his second-in-command. Dexron laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Humans. Our scouts say they are weak, soft creatures. This will be over quickly." The first human ship they met was small, barely the size of a Vorthok fighter. It appeared on their screens like a tiny dot, alone in the vast darkness of space. The ship sent a message. "This is Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defender. Welcome to human space. We wish to speak with your leaders about peaceful contact between our peoples." The voice was calm, steady. Not what Dexron expected from someone facing 300 warships with nothing but a small patrol vessel. Peaceful contact? Dexron's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Tell this human that the Vorthok do not make peace with inferior species. Tell him to surrender or be destroyed." The human ship stayed exactly where it was. Morrison's voice came again, still calm but with something harder underneath. "Admiral, we have families, children, and innocent people in this system. If you attack them, we will defend ourselves." "With what?" Dexron roared. "You have one tiny ship against my fleet." "With everything we have," Morrison replied simply. Dexron had enough of talking. "Destroy that pathetic ship, then we move to their colonies." The Vorthok opened fire with enough energy to crack a moon. But when the light faded, the small human ship was still there, dancing between the energy beams like it knew where they would be before they were fired. "Impossible," whispered Dexron's second-in-command. Morrison's ship began to move. Not away from the Vorthok fleet, but toward it. The human was actually attacking 300 warships with a single small vessel. What happened next would be talked about in Vorthok military schools for generations. Morrison did not fight like any enemy they had ever faced. He did not charge straight at them with honor and strength. Instead, he fought like something wild and desperate and completely unpredictable. The human ship fired at the nearest asteroid field, breaking apart huge rocks and sending them spinning toward the Vorthok ships. While the warships were busy destroying the rocks, Morrison slipped between their defensive lines. "Where did he go?" demanded Dexron. "Sir, he is using the debris as cover. Our senses cannot track him properly." Morrison struck at the support ships first, the ones carrying fuel and supplies. His small ship moved like a hunting animal, appearing from behind chunks of rock to fire and then disappearing again, but the worst part was not his tactics. It was what he did to their communications. The human had somehow broken into their radio channels. As Vorthok warriors died in the burning wreckage of their ships, Morrison broadcast their death screams across every frequency, the sounds of dying. Vorthok filled every ship in the fleet. "Turn off the communications," ordered Dexron. "We cannot, sir." "He has control of our systems somehow." Morrison's voice cut through the screams. "This is what war sounds like, Admiral. This is what you brought to our peaceful system. Are you sure you want to continue?" Dexron had never heard such coldness in a voice. The human was not angry or afraid. He was simply showing them the price of their choice. The battle continued for 6 hours. Morrison's single ship destroyed 12 Vorthog vessels and damaged 30 more. He used mining equipment from the asteroid field as weapons, turned chunks of ice into missiles, and even crashed a supply ship into one of their destroyers by taking control of its computers. When 3 more human patrol ships arrived as backup, Morrison had already proven his point. The newcomers followed his lead, copying his wild tactics and turning the space around the asteroid field into a death trap for any Vortex ship that entered. "Admiral," his second-in-command said quietly, "we are losing ships faster than we can." "Count them. These humans fight like nothing we have ever seen." "They are animals," Vexron snarled. "They have no honor." "No, sir," the officer replied, watching another Vortex ship explode on his screen. "They have something else." "They have creativity," Morrison's voice came again over their speakers. "Admiral Vexron, you came here to conquer us? You destroyed our mining station and killed 300 innocent people. Now you know what we can do when we defend ourselves. You can continue this fight and lose more ships, or you can leave our space and never return." Vexron looked at his fleet status. In 6 hours he had lost more ships than in his last 3 campaigns combined, all to 4 small human vessels and 1 man who refused to fight by any rules Vexron understood. "This is impossible," he muttered. "How can they fight like this?" His communications officer, a young Vorthek who had been studying the human transmissions, spoke up nervously. "Sir, I have been analyzing their combat methods. They do not seem to have standard military tactics like us. Each human commander fights differently, using whatever is available." "What do you mean, this Morrison, sir?" "According to his ship's registration, he was a cargo pilot before joining their military. He is using civilian equipment and mining tools as weapons. He fights like someone who has had to solve problems his whole life, not just fight battles." Vexron stared at the view screen where Morrison's ship continued to dance between his warships like a ghost, a cargo pilot. A simple transport worker had just crippled his invasion fleet. "All ships," Vexron commanded, his voice heavy with defeat. "We withdraw from human space." "Sir?" his second-in-command asked in surprise. "You heard me. We leave, now." As the great Vorthak fleet turned and limped away from human territory, Morrison's voice followed them one last time. "Admiral, if you ever decide to try peaceful contact instead of invasion, we will be here. Humans prefer to make friends rather than enemies." Zektar opened his eyes and looked at the young cadets before him. Many of them had their mouths open in shock. "That was our first lesson about humans," he said slowly. "They do not simply fight. They adapt. They take whatever they have, no matter how simple or peaceful, and they make it into something that can protect what they love." One young cadet raised his claw. "But Elder Zektar, how could one small ship defeat so many of ours?" Zektar smiled grimly. "Because, young one, Morrison was not fighting with military training or superior weapons. He was fighting with something much more dangerous. He was fighting with the desperate creativity of someone who refused to let his people die." The old warrior paused, remembering. "That day we learned that humans do not see a mining laser and think tool for cutting rock. They see a weapon that can slice through ship armor. They do not see an asteroid field and think obstacle to navigation. They see cover, ammunition, and opportunity." Admiral Vexron returned to our homeworld and told the High Command that humans were unlike any enemy we had faced. They did not fight with honor or follow the ancient rules of war. They fought to win, using any method necessary. Zektar's voice grew quiet, but that was only the beginning. Morrison and his small victory were nothing compared to what came later. If you think one human with a patrol ship was terrifying, wait until I tell you about what happened when they had time to prepare for real war. The cadets sat in complete silence, trying to imagine warriors who could turn anything into a weapon, who fought without rules or limits. "Next time," Zektar promised, "I will tell you about the siege of Colony 7, where I learned that humans can make soldiers out of farmers and weapons out of farm tools, where I discovered that every human no matter how peaceful they seem, carries the heart of a warrior inside them. Zektar walked slowly around the room, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silence. The young cadets watched him with wide eyes, still thinking about Morrison and his impossible victory. But the old warrior's expression had grown even darker. Morrison's victory was just the beginning, Zektar said. The High Command was angry. They sent me and 50,000 warriors to Colony 7 under General Krexver. We were told to make an example of the humans, to show them what happened when they humiliated the Vorthak. He stopped walking and stared at the wall, seeing memories that still haunted his dreams. Colony 7 was supposed to be easy. Our intelligence said it was a farming world. 3 million humans growing food and doing research. No military bases. No warships, just farmers and scientists and their families. One of the cadets spoke up. That should have been a simple conquest, Elder. Zektar's laugh was bitter. That is what we thought, young one. That is what we all thought. The old warrior's mind went back to that day when the Vorthak fleet had surrounded the green world of Colony 7, 50 massive ships blocking every escape route. General Krexver had been confident this would take no more than a few days. Attention. Humans of Colony 7, Krexver had broadcast to the planet. You are surrounded. Surrender now and you will be relocated to work camps. Resist and you will be destroyed. The response came from someone called Colonel Lisa Hayes. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. General Krexver, this is Colonel Hayes of the Colony 7 Defense Force. We appreciate your offer, but we must decline. This is our home, and we intend to keep it. Krexver had laughed at that. Defense Force? On a farming world? Human, you have no military. You grow food. What can farmers do against warriors? I guess we are about to find out, Hayes had replied. That was when Zektar learned his second lesson about humans. They could turn anything into a weapon? Anything at all. The first sign of trouble came when the Vorthak tried to land their troop ships. As the massive vessels descended toward the main colony, they ran into problems. The humans had flooded their crop fields, turning the flat farmland into a muddy swamp that could not support heavy ships. Sir, reported the landing commander, we cannot set down. The ground is too soft. Our ships are sinking. Then use the backup landing sites, ordered Krexver, but the backup sites had problems too. The humans had dug deep trenches where there used to be roads. They had built walls out of farming equipment and bales of hay. Every landing zone was blocked or trapped. How did they do this so quickly? Demanded Krexver. Zektar had been watching the planet with his sensors. Sir, it appears they used their farming machines. Plows to dig trenches, harvesters to move earth, irrigation systems to flood the fields. Then we will land in the mountains. Sir, they have blocked the mountain passes with fallen trees. And sir, they appear to have weapons. Krexver stared at his tactical display. What kind of weapons? I am not sure, sir. They are not in our database. The Vorthak finally managed to land their troops in a forest clearing 20 miles from the main colony. But as they advanced toward the human settlement, they discovered that the humans had been busy. Every trail was blocked by fallen trees. Every bridge was destroyed. The humans had turned the peaceful forest into a maze of obstacles and traps. Watch your step, called out squad leader Thok as he led his warriors through the trees. The humans have been here. A young warrior named Gex stepped on what looked like solid ground and fell into a deep pit filled with sharp wooden stakes. His screams echoed through the forest. Medic! Shouted Thok, but as the medical team rushed forward, another trap triggered. A huge log swung down from the trees, crushing 2 more warriors. They are using farming tools, whispered the medic as he examined the wooden stakes. These are made from fence posts. Zektar had been with the 3rd squad when they found the first farmhouse. It looked empty and peaceful, with flowers growing in the yard and children's toys scattered on the porch. Check for civilians, ordered the squad leader, but as soon as they approached the house, it exploded. The blast was not from military explosives. It was from fertilizer, the same chemicals humans used to help their crops grow. They'd booby-trapped their own homes, reported Zektar to his commander, using farm chemicals as explosives. How many casualties? 7 dead, 12 wounded. Sir, these humans fight like nothing we have ever seen. They use their farming tools as weapons. The siege continued for weeks. Every day brought new surprises from the humans. They had modified their crop-dusting airplanes into attack aircraft, dropping homemade bombs made from fertilizer and fuel. They used their tractors as armored vehicles, welding metal plates over the windows and mounting weapons on top. But the worst part was that they seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Children who looked no older than 12 years old served as messengers, crawling through ventilation systems and drainage pipes that were too small for Vorthak warriors. They would appear, deliver information or supplies, and vanish again like ghosts. Sir, reported Intelligence Officer Vex, we have intercepted human communications. Their leader, this Colonel Hayes, was a military engineer before she became a farmer. She is using her engineering knowledge to turn their civilian infrastructure into military assets. What do you mean? Asked Krexfer. She has turned their irrigation system into a defensive network. Water flows through underground pipes to every part of the colony. They can flood any area we try to attack, or drain it dry if we try to use it for cover. Krexver studied the tactical display showing the human colony. It was built like a fortress now, but made from farming equipment and civilian structures. How many humans are we fighting? Best estimate is about 50,000 adults, sir. But they have organized their entire population. Even the children are involved in the defense. Children? Krexver was shocked. They put their younglings in danger? Not in combat, sir. But they use them as scouts and messengers? The human children know every tunnel and hiding place in the colony. They can move supplies and information without being detected. Zektar remembered the day he had cornered 3 human children in an abandoned barn. They could not have been more than 10 years old. Instead of crying or begging for mercy, they had calmly triggered another fertilizer bomb and escaped through a tunnel he had not even seen. These humans, he had reported to his squad leader, they teach their children to fight before they can properly walk. The breakthrough came in the 6th month of the siege. The Vorthak had finally surrounded the main colony center, where most of the human population was hiding. They had heavy weapons pointed at every entrance. Victory seemed certain. That was when Colonel Hayes led her final assault. It started at 3 in the morning with a sound like thunder. But it was not thunder. It was the sound of 50 human farming vehicles charging toward the Vorthak lines. What is that noise? Demanded Krexver from his command post. Sir, the humans are attacking. They are using their farming equipment as assault vehicles. Tractors with steel plates welded to their fronts smashed through Vorthak defensive positions. Combine harvesters, their cutting blades spinning, moved down Vorthak warriors like wheat. Grain trucks loaded with explosives rammed into Vorthak vehicles and detonated. Behind the farm vehicles came the human fighters. Not trained soldiers, but farmers and teachers and shopkeepers and mechanics. They fought with tools from their daily lives turned into weapons of war. They are using pitchforks as spears, reported one terrified Vorthak warrior over the radio. Hammers as war clubs. They turned their kitchen knives into bayonets. But the most terrifying sight was Colonel Hayes herself. She rode on top of a massive harvesting machine, its blades cutting through everything in front of her. In her hands she held not a military weapon, but a welding torch, using it to cut through Vorthak armor like it was paper. Fall back, ordered Krexver. All units, fall back to the landing zones. But the humans had anticipated this. They had spent 8 months preparing for this moment. As the Vorthak retreated, they found their escape routes blocked by more farming equipment. Hay balers launched burning bales at their vehicles. Irrigation pumps sprayed them with burning fuel. Zektar had been part of the rear guard trying to cover the retreat. He watched in horror as humans who had been growing food just months before systematically destroyed a professional military. force using nothing but creativity and determination. Elder Zektar, one of the cadets interrupted. His memories. How did the siege end? Zektar looked at the young warrior. We surrendered, young one. 50,000 professional Vorthok soldiers surrendered to farmers and shopkeepers. General Krexver had no choice. We had lost half our force, and the humans showed no signs of giving up. But how could farmers defeat trained warriors? Because, Zektar said slowly, they were not just farmers anymore. Hayes had turned them into something new. They were still growing food and teaching children and fixing machines. But they were also soldiers who used every tool and every piece of knowledge they had to protect their home. The old warrior's voice grew quiet. I learned something that day that changed how I saw war forever. Military training teaches you to use weapons, but humans learn to make weapons out of anything. They do not see a tractor and think farming equipment. The training room was completely silent now. The young Vorthak cadets stared at Zektar with a mixture of fear and fascination. 2 stories of impossible human victories had shaken everything they thought they knew. About warfare, Zektar noticed their expressions and nodded slowly. Yes, young ones. I can see in your eyes that you are beginning to understand, but those 2 battles were just the beginning. What I will tell you now is about the greatest space battle in Vorthok history. The day our entire way of thinking about war changed forever. The old warrior moved to the window and looked out at the stars. After Colony 7, the High Command was furious. They gathered the largest fleet in our history. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon we had. Fleet Admiral Vextran commanded 1,000 warships. The pride of our military, he turned back to face the cadets. The plan was simple. We would crush the human fleet in one massive battle, end the war quickly and completely. We chose the Iron Nebula because the metal particles there would interfere with human technology. We thought it would give us the advantage. Zektar's eyes grew distant again. I was aboard the flagship Star Destroyer, serving as a tactical officer. I had seen humans fight on the ground. I thought I understood them. I was wrong. The memory took him back to that day when the great Vorthok Armada had assembled at the edge of the Iron Nebula. The sight had been magnificent. 1,000 ships arranged in perfect battle formation, their weapons charged and ready. It was the most powerful military force ever assembled in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Vextran stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident in his victory. Communications, send our demands to the human fleet. Sir, we are detecting approximately 200 human ships in the nebula. They appear to be waiting for us. 200 against 1,000, Vextran laughed. This will be over in an hour. Tell the humans to surrender or be destroyed. The response came from Captain Ryan Blake of the UES Relentless. His voice was calm, almost friendly. Admiral Vextran, this is Captain Blake. We have received your message. We must respectfully decline your generous offer of surrender. We prefer to keep our freedom. Then you will die for your stubbornness, Vextran replied. Maybe, Blake said. But it will not be easy for you. That should have been a warning. Humans never said things would be easy. They always had a plan. The Vorthak fleet moved into the Iron Nebula in perfect formation. The metal particles immediately began interfering with their sensors, just as expected. But it would affect the humans even more, or so they thought. Sir, reported the sensor. Officer, we are having difficulty tracking the human ships. The interference is worse than anticipated. No matter, said Vextran. We have enough firepower to destroy everything in the nebula. Begin the bombardment. 1,000 Vorthok ships opened fire at once. The space around them lit up like a small sun as energy beams and missiles filled the nebula. Surely nothing could survive such an attack, but when the light faded, the human ships were still there. Not where they had been before, but scattered throughout the nebula in positions that made no sense. How did they move so quickly? Demanded Vextran. Sir, I do not think they moved. I think they were never where we thought they were. Zektar had been monitoring the tactical display. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Ships appeared on sensors, then vanished. Energy readings came from empty space. It was like fighting ghosts. "Sir," he reported, "I believe the humans are using the metal particles to create false sensor readings. They are making us see ships that are not there. Impossible. No one knows the nebula well enough to do that." But Zektar was right. Captain Blake had been an asteroid miner before joining the human navy. He knew how metal particles behaved in space better than any Vorthak admiral. The humans were not fighting despite the nebula's interference. They were fighting because of it. The first real human attack came from what the Vorthak thought was empty space. A squadron of small fighters emerged from behind a cloud of metal particles and struck at the supply ships in the rear of the formation. "Where did they come from?" shouted Vextrin. "Unknown, sir. They appeared to be debris on our sensors." The human fighters were not like anything the Vorthak had seen before. They moved in ways that seemed impossible, spinning and diving through the metal clouds like they were flying through empty space. "Sir, the lead fighter is piloted by someone called Commander Amy Foster. She appears to be leading a squadron of civilian volunteers." "Civilians in fighters?" "Yes, sir. Former miners, cargo pilots, racing pilots. They know how to fly in difficult conditions." Foster's squadron struck like lightning and vanished again into the metal clouds. But their attack had been perfectly planned. They had disabled the flagship's main weapons, leaving it vulnerable. "All ships, concentrate fire on the enemy fighters," ordered Vextrin. But the humans were already gone, hidden somewhere in the swirling metal particles. And while the Vorthak searched for them, more attacks came from other directions. Blake's main fleet was using tactics that no military academy had ever taught. They would appear suddenly, fire a devastating barrage, and disappear again before the Vorthak could respond. Sometimes they attacked from above, sometimes from below, sometimes from 3 directions at once. "How are they coordinating their attacks?" asked Vextrin. "The interference should make communication impossible." Zektar had been studying the human attack patterns. "Sir, I think they are not communicating during the battle. I think they planned everything in advance. Each group knows exactly when and where to attack. That would require incredible precision and timing." "Yes, sir, and complete trust in their fellow humans." The battle continued for hours. The Vorthak fleet, despite its overwhelming numbers, was being slowly torn apart. The humans used every trick Blake could think of. They hid behind asteroids until Vorthak ships came close, then attacked from point-blank range. They used the metal particles as weapons, creating electromagnetic storms that disabled Vorthak electronics. The most shocking moment came when a human cargo ship, heavily damaged and apparently helpless, drifted toward the Vorthak flagship. It was broadcasting a distress signal asking for help. "Sir, the human vessel appears to be in trouble. Should we render aid?" "It could be a trap," warned Zektar. "It is one small cargo ship," said Vextrin. "What harm could it do?" The cargo ship exploded when it reached the flagship, nearly destroying the bridge. But that was not the worst part. The explosion created a cloud of metal debris that completely blinded the flagship's sensors. "So we cannot see anything. The explosion has created a sensor dead zone around us." That was when Foster's fighters struck again. They came out of the metal cloud like hunting animals, their weapons firing at point-blank range. The flagship's armor held, but barely. "All ships, close formation around the flagship," ordered Vextrin, but as the Vorthak ships moved closer together, Blake sprung his real trap. The humans had been herding the Vorthak fleet into a carefully prepared killing ground. As the ships clustered together, human vessels appeared from every direction at once. "Sir, we are surrounded. The humans have us in a crossfire." Zektar watched in horror as the pride of the Vorthak fleet was systematically destroyed. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were reduced to burning wreckage by human pilots who used mining techniques and civilian knowledge as weapons of war. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we are receiving a message from Captain Blake." Blake's voice filled the bridge. "Admiral Vextrin, you have fought bravely, but this battle is over. Surrender now, and we will allow your surviving ships to leave the nebula safely." Vextrin looked at his tactical display. Of his 1,000 ships, fewer than 300 remained operational. The humans had destroyed 2/3 of his fleet using tactics that seemed impossible. How? He whispered. How did they do this? Zektar had been analyzing the battle from the beginning. Sir, they used everything against us. The nebula, the asteroids, even our own tactics. They made the space itself into a weapon. Explain. Blake knew this nebula better than we did. He used to mine here. He knew exactly how the metal particles would affect our sensors. He planned the entire battle around that knowledge. And the other pilots? Most of them were civilians, sir. Miners, cargo haulers, people who fly through dangerous space for a living. They were not trained for military combat, but they knew how to survive in conditions that would kill most pilots. Vextron stared at the viewscreen where human ships moved through the metal clouds like they were swimming through water. They turned our advantage into their weapon. Yes, sir. They made us blind, then used their superior knowledge of the environment to destroy us. The fleet admiral closed his eyes. Another impossible defeat. Signal the fleet. We surrender. Blake's response was immediate. Admiral, your surviving ships are free to leave. We will provide safe passage to the edge of the nebula. As the broken Vorthak fleet limped away from the Iron Nebula, Zektar could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. The humans had taken everything the Vorthak thought they knew about space warfare and turned it upside down. They did not just fight us, he reported to Vextron. They made the entire battlefield work for them. The metal particles, the asteroids, the sensor interference. They turned it all into weapons. Zektar stood in front of the young cadets, but his usual confident posture was gone. His shoulders sagged slightly, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than before. The stories I have told you so far are about battles between fleets and armies, he said slowly. What I will tell you now is different. This is about one human. One single human who changed how I think about everything. The old warrior's claws traced the deep scars on his arm, scars that looked different from the others. Newer somehow and more personal. After the Iron Nebula disaster, the High Command was desperate. They decided to attack the human fortress, world of New Gibraltar. It was their military training center where they made new soldiers. The plan was to destroy it quickly before the humans could organize another impossible defense. He paused, his 4 eyes growing distant. I was part of the ground assault force. We landed successfully and began advancing toward the main base. Everything was going according to plan. Then my unit got separated from the main force during a human artillery attack. Zektar walked slowly around the room as he remembered that day. There were 12 of us, all experienced warriors. We took shelter in an abandoned industrial complex to wait for rescue. It seemed safe enough. The humans had evacuated all the workers when we landed. One of the cadets leaned forward. What happened, Elder? We met Sergeant Alex Price, Zektar said simply. And for 3 days, one human hunted us through that complex like we were prey animals. The memory was as clear as if it had happened yesterday. Zektar and his squad had entered the industrial complex thinking they would hide there until their rescue arrived. The place was huge, full of machinery for making starship parts. Conveyor belts, heavy cranes, chemical tanks, furnaces for melting metal. It looked deserted. Spread out and secure the area, Squad Leader Vorth had ordered. We wait here until Command sends extraction. Zektar had been checking the eastern section when he heard the first explosion. It came from the main assembly line where 2 of his squad mates had been standing guard. Report, called Vorth over the radio. Grack and Nex are down, came the shaky reply. Something hit the crane controls. A huge piece of machinery fell on them. Accident or attack? Unknown, sir. I do not see any enemies, but Zektar had noticed something. The crane had not just fallen randomly. Someone had cut specific support cables in exactly the right places to make it fall where his squad mates were standing. Sir, he reported, I think we are not alone here. That was when they heard the voice. It came from the loudspeakers throughout the complex, calm and steady. Attention Vorthak soldiers. This is Sergeant Alex Price, United Earth Army Corps of Engineers, you are trespassing in a restricted military area. Leave now and you will not be harmed, Vorth laughed. 1 human against 12 Vorthak warriors? Show yourself human and we will make your death quick. I appreciate the offer. Price replied, but I think I will stay where I am. You are welcome to try to find me, the hunt began immediately. Vorth split the squad into 3 groups of 4, searching every corner of the complex. But Price seemed to know the facility better than they did. He had turned it into a deadly maze. The second attack came an hour later. Warriors Kex and Thal were moving through the chemical storage area when the lights went out. In the darkness, they heard the sound of valves opening and liquid splashing. Gas masks, shouted Kex, but it was too late. Price had released some kind of industrial solvent into the air. Both warriors collapsed, choking and gasping. He's using the factory's own systems against us, Zektar reported to Vorth. The chemicals, the machinery, everything. Then we destroyed all, Vorth snarled. Burn the whole place down. But when they tried to set fires, they discovered that Price had shut off the oxygen supply to most of the complex. The fires would not catch. He had turned the factory's safety systems into weapons. The third day was when Zektar saw Price for the first time. The human was moving through the ventilation system above them, completely silent. He was not particularly large or impressive. Looking. Just an ordinary human in a dirty uniform, carrying basic tools and explosives, but the way he moved told Zektar everything he needed to know. Price was not running or hiding, he was hunting. Sir, Zektar whispered into his radio, I have visual contact with the human. He is in the air vents directly above Section C. Take him out, ordered Vorth. Zektar raised his weapon and fired. At the ceiling. The energy beam burned through the metal, but Price was already gone. Seconds later, the entire ventilation system in that section collapsed. The human had somehow weakened the supports so that Zektar's own weapon would bring down the ceiling. 2 more warriors were trapped under the fallen metal. Zektar barely escaped himself. He is using our weapons against us, he reported, amazed despite his fear. He planned that trap perfectly. Price's voice came over the speakers again. Sergeant Zektar, that was very good shooting. But you might want to move away from that wall. Zektar looked around in confusion. What wall? That was when he noticed the small explosive charges that Price had attached to the chemical tanks behind him. The human had been close enough to plant bombs while remaining completely undetected. Move! Zektar shouted, diving for cover as the tanks exploded. The blast sent toxic chemicals spraying everywhere, forcing the surviving Vorthak to retreat. To the far end of the complex. By the end of the second day, only 4 warriors remained alive. Zektar, Vorth, and 2 others named Texmore and Grix. They had barricaded themselves in the main office area, the only place that seemed safe from Price's traps. How is he doing this? Demanded Vorth. 1 human cannot defeat trained Vorthak. Warriors. He knows this place, said Zektar. Every pipe, every wire, every machine. He is not fighting us with weapons. He is fighting us with knowledge. Then we will outlast him. He has to sleep sometime. But Price did not seem to need sleep. All night long they heard him moving through the complex, setting new traps, preparing new surprises. The sound of cutting tools and welding equipment echoed through the darkness. The end came on the 3rd morning. Texmore had been wounded in the chemical explosion and was getting worse. His breathing was labored, and his skin had turned a sickly green color. We need to get him medical attention, said Zektar. The human will kill us if we leave this room, replied V.O. Arth. That was when Price's voice came over the speakers one more time, but this time it was different. Quieter, more serious. Sergeant Zektar, your friend is badly hurt. I can help him. It is a trap? Snarled Vorth. Maybe, said Price. But he is going to die if he does not get treatment soon. I know field medicine. I can save his life. Zektar looked at Texmore, who had been his friend since training academy. The warrior was dying, and they all knew it. What do you want in return? Zektar asked. Nothing. I do not kill wounded soldiers, even enemy ones. Vorth grabbed Zektar's arm. Do not trust him. Humans lie. But Zektar had been watching Price for 3 days. The human had killed 6 of his squad mates, yes. But he had done it cleanly, efficiently, without cruelty or torture. There had been no taunting, no gloating, just professional elimination of enemy soldiers. I am coming out, Zektar announced. I am carrying my wounded comrade. Do not shoot. Come ahead, Price replied. I will meet you in the main assembly area. Zektar picked up Texmore and walked slowly out of their barricade. Vorth and Grix followed, weapons ready. Price was waiting for them near the medical station. Up close, Zektar could see that the human was exhausted. His uniform was torn and dirty, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But his hands were steady as he examined Texmore. Chemical poisoning, Price said quietly, but I can counteract it. I have the antidote in the medical supplies here. Why would you help us? Asked Zektar. Price looked up from his work. Because he is a soldier, same as me, same as you. War is war, but this is not war anymore. This is just one warrior helping another. For the next hour, Price worked to save Texmore's life. He used human medical techniques that Zektar had never seen. Before, injections, breathing treatments, even some kind of electrical stimulation to help his friend's damaged organs. He will live, Price finally announced. But he needs proper medical care soon. Why? Zektar asked again. You could have let him die. We are your enemies. Price packed up his medical supplies. You invaded my world, yes. You came here to destroy my people. But right now, you are just soldiers far from home, trying to keep a friend alive. I can respect that. The human started to walk away, then stopped. Your rescue ships will be here in a few hours. I will not attack them. Get your friend to safety. Wait, called Zektar. What is your name again? Alex Price, Sergeant, Corps of Engineers, originally from a place called Ohio. Why did you? Tell me that, Price smiled sadly. Because I want you to remember that humans have names and homes and families, just like you do. Maybe that will matter someday. When the Vorthek rescue ships arrived, they found Zektar and his 3 surviving squad mates waiting in the main courtyard. Texmore was alive, breathing easily thanks to Price's treatment. There was also a note, written in careful Vorthak script. It explained the medical treatment that had been given and included instructions for continued care. At the bottom, Price had written, I am sorry for your losses. Zektar stood silently for a long moment, his eyes focused on something beyond the walls of the training room. The young cadets waited patiently, knowing that this final story would be the most important of all. The war, he began slowly, lasted exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days. By the end, the Vorthik hegemony had lost more ships and warriors than in all our previous conquests combined. We, who had ruled 17 star systems, were being defeated by a species that had not even left their home galaxy. He turned to face his students, and they could see something different in his expression. Not just the haunted look of a veteran, but something else. Hope, perhaps. The final battle was not fought with weapons or ships or clever tactics. It was fought with words. And the human who led those negotiations taught us the most important lesson of all about their species. The memory took Zektar back to the great conference chamber on the neutral world of Kepler Station. The Vorthak High Council had finally accepted what every warrior already knew. They could not win this war. The humans had proven themselves. Too adaptable, too creative, too determined to ever be conquered. Supreme Chancellor Vexcan sat at the massive stone table, his ancient carapace bearing the ceremonial scars of a dozen conquered worlds. Across from him sat a single human woman in a simple blue uniform. I am Admiral Kate Murphy, she had said, her voice calm and professional. I represent the United Earth government and its colonial territories. Zektar had been part of the Vorthak security detail, standing guard along the walls. He remembered studying this human admiral, trying to understand what made her so dangerous. She looked ordinary enough. Middle-aged, graying hair, kind eyes. Nothing like the terrifying warriors they had faced in battle. Admiral Murphy, Chancellor Vexcan had begun, you have requested this meeting. What are your terms for our surrender? Murphy had smiled at that, a genuine expression that seemed to light up her entire face. Chancellor, I think there has been a misunderstanding. We are not here to discuss your surrender. We are here to discuss peace. There is a difference? Oh yes, Murphy had replied. Surrender means one side wins and the other side loses. Peace means both sides find a way to win together. Vexcan's mandibles had clicked in confusion. Explain, the Vorthak hegemony is a proud civilization with thousands of years of history. You have built amazing cities, created beautiful art, and developed advanced technology. We do not want to destroy any of that. Then what do you want? Murphy had leaned forward slightly. We want to be your friends. The silence in the chamber had been absolute. Zektar remembered the shock that had run through every Vorthak in the room. Friends? With the enemies who had defeated them? You must be joking, Vexcan had said finally. Not at all. Chancellor, humanity learned long ago that we are stronger when we work together than when we fight each other. We believe the same could be true for our species. You defeated us. You have the right to demand anything you want. Territory, resources, slaves. Why would you offer friendship instead? Murphy's expression had grown serious. Because, Chancellor, we humans believe that peace built on conquest never lasts. Real peace only comes when former enemies choose to become partners. Vexcan had gestured to the guards along the walls. These warriors have lost friends and family to your people. They hate you. How can there be friendship after so much death? The same way there was friendship between my grandfather and a German soldier he fought in World War II, Murphy had replied calmly. I do not understand. Long ago, humans fought a terrible war among ourselves. My grandfather's unit captured a wounded German soldier named Klaus. Instead of letting him die, my grandfather saved his life. After the war ended, Klaus came to America and married my grandfather's sister. He became part of our family. Murphy had paused, letting that sink in. War makes enemies, Chancellor, but peace makes families. The negotiations had continued for days. Zektar had watched in amazement as Admiral Murphy slowly transformed the entire discussion. She did not demand reparations or territory. Instead, she offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and joint exploration missions. Your people are natural warriors, she had told the Vorthak delegation. We could use that strength to explore dangerous regions of space, to protect merchant ships, from pirates to defend colonies on hostile worlds. You would trust us with such responsibilities? Asked General Krexver, who had survived the disaster at Colony 7. General, you and your warriors fought bravely against impossible odds. That kind of courage and determination is exactly what we need for the challenges ahead. But the most shocking moment had come when Murphy made her final offer. The United Earth government is prepared to share our medical technology with the Vorthak people, she announced, including treatments for the genetic diseases that have plagued your species for generations. Chancellor Vexcan had stood up, so quickly that his chair fell over. What did you say? Our doctors have been studying Vorthak biology from blood samples recovered during the war. We believe we can cure the bone rot disease that affects your elderly and the shell weakness that kills so many of your children. Why? Vexcan had whispered. Why would you give us such gifts? Murphy's answer had changed everything. Because, Chancellor, healing is what humans do. We fight when we must, but we prefer to heal. The peace treaty was signed 3 days later. But for Zektar, the real proof of human nature came in the months that followed. Dr. Sam Parker had been one of the first humans to arrive on the Vorthak homeworld. He was a combat medic who had treated wounded soldiers during the war. Now he came to treat wounded enemies. Zektar himself had been one of Parker's first patients. The old warrior had been suffering from bone rot, the disease that slowly turned Vorthak skeletons to powder. He had maybe 6 months to live. Well, Sergeant, Parker had said after examining him, the good news is that this is completely treatable. The bad news is that the treatment is going to hurt quite a bit. You are willing to save the life of an enemy who tried to kill your people? Parker had looked genuinely surprised by the question. Sergeant, the war is over. You are not my enemy. Anymore, you are my patient. The treatment had taken 3 months. During that time, Zektar had watched Parker work 16-hour days, treating hundreds of Vorthek patients. The human doctor never showed favoritism, never refused treatment to anyone, no matter what they had done during the war. How do you do it? Zektar had asked him one day. How do you care for people who were your enemies? Parker had paused in his work, considering the question seriously. Because, Sergeant, that is what makes us human. We can choose to see past what someone was and focus on what they could become. The changes had come quickly after that. Vorthek warriors began serving alongside human soldiers on joint missions. Vorthek engineers worked with human scientists to develop new technologies. Vorthek artists collaborated with human musicians to create entirely new forms of expression, but the most important change had been in how both species saw war itself. Admiral Murphy taught us something that changed our entire civilization. Zektar told his cadets. She showed us that true strength is not the ability to destroy your enemies. True strength is the ability to turn your enemies into friends. One of the young cadets raised his claw. But Elder, how can we trust humans after they defeated us so completely? Zektar smiled, the first genuine smile he had shown during all his stories. Young one, that is exactly why we can trust them. They had the power to destroy us completely, and they chose not to use it. They could have demanded anything they wanted, and instead they offered everything they had. He walked over to the window and looked out at the training yard where young Vorthek and human soldiers were practicing together. Look out there, he said. Do you see enemies? Or do you see partners learning from each other? The cadets crowded around the window. In the yard below, human instructors were teaching Vorthek warriors new fighting techniques, while Vorthek engineers showed human soldiers how to maintain their equipment in hostile environments. The humans taught us their greatest secret, Zektar continued. They showed us that every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. Every problem is a chance to find a better solution. Every enemy is a potential friend who just has not been given the right opportunity. He turned back to face his students. That is why we study their war tactics now. Not to fight them, but to learn how they think, how they solve problems, how they never give up hope, even when everything seems impossible. One cadet spoke up quietly. Elder, what is the most important thing humans taught you? Zektar thought for a long moment. They taught me that being strong does not mean being able to crush your enemies. Being strong means being able to lift them up and make them your friends. He paused, remembering Admiral Murphy's words from that first negotiation. The humans have a saying, the best way to destroy an enemy is to make him a friend. They prove to us that peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of friendship. The old warrior looked at each of his young cadets in turn. You will graduate soon and take your places as officers in the combined Vorthek Human Defense Force. When you do, remember these stories. Remember that your greatest weapon is not your strength or your tactics or your technology.